Hello, and welcome to Deep Roots Nature Show. We have a great episode for you today at Big Bull Creek Park, where we explored the prairie and woodlands with Johnson County Parks and Recreation District. Before we begin, I just have a couple announcements to make. First, I'd like to thank today's episode sponsor, Johnson County Parks and Recreation District, and donors like you for making programs like this possible. If you enjoyed today's episode, sign up for this Saturday's guided naturalist walk at Big Bull Creek Park. I'll be leading this hike along with Johnson County Park and Recreation District's natural resource technician. It's sure to be a fun time, and we're going to be bringing our binoculars to look for migrating songbirds as we explore the prairies and woodlands at Big Bull Creek Park. Be sure to pack your lunch because at the end of our tour, we're going to hang out at the nature play area and enjoy our lunch and relax and chat with other nature enthusiasts. If you need to brush up on your gardening skills, consider joining me 3 times a month at the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Discovery Center for our Discover Native Gardening sessions, where we learn seasonal gardening skills, how to maintain and plant gardens while we grow community. You can register online at deeproots.org. This webinar will be recorded and all resources will be available online. Following today's episode, I'm going to send you an email with all the information discussed, as well as links to register for upcoming events. Don't forget, drop your comments in the chat and put your questions in the Q&A. And while you're at it, following today's episode, please visit us online at deeproots.org for more information on upcoming events, webinars, native gardening resources, and how you can get involved. While you're there, consider making a donation. I am super pleased to introduce our guest expert today, who will be joining us live for the Q&A at the end of today's session as well. Matt Garrett is the Natural Resource Manager for the Gold Medal Award-winning Johnson County Park and Recreation District. He's dedicated his entire career to environmental education and natural resource management in the Kansas City region. Matt's a regional conservation leader focused on large-scale prairie restoration, invasive plant removal, and conservation planning. In his spare time, he mountain bikes and throws frisbees to his blue heeler. Hey, Matt, how's it going today?
Good, glad to be here.
Yeah, so happy to have you back. So tell us, I know you've got lots and lots, well, more like thousands of acres that you manage at Johnson County. And are there any exciting programs or projects you all are working on currently?
Yeah, it's a busy time of year. At Big Bull Creek, the park staff and resource team recently got, I think, over 100 acres of prairie in the ground, of fresh new habitat. And some of our team were in a boat yesterday putting 500,000 fish in Shawnee Mission Park. So
Mm.
every day is something different.
Absolutely. And can you remind myself and our viewers, how many acres does Johnson County Parks approximately cover?
We have like 10,500, I believe, and of that, almost 9,000, a little over 9,000 of it is natural areas.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so people think of playgrounds and theater in the park and things like that, but the majority of the land that we hold are natural spaces.
That's really cool. Yeah, you've got plenty to keep you all busy, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We have a great show for you all, and I hope you will stick around for the Q&A at the end where Matt can answer your questions about large landscape management. He has his specialty is prairies and woodlands, so be sure to stick around and put your questions in the Q&A. All right, let's go ahead and get started with today's Deep Roots Nature Show episode. Howdy! Sydney Ross of Deep Roots here. Last week I visited Big Bull Creek Park between Edgerton and Gardner, Kansas with Johnson County Parks and Recreation District. This is a big park. I'm talking 2,060 acres big. They emphasize nature-based learning, play, and land restoration. And this park has it all. Beautiful spaces to eat lunch, play with the family, and multi-use trails for hiking, biking, and horseback riding. In today's Deep Roots Nature Show episode, we explore the nature play area, prairie, and woodland trails. Okay, let's get started and learn more about Big Bull Creek Park.
Hi, my name's Dan Hayes. I'm with Johnson County Parks and Recreation District. I'm the Southwest Region Manager. I manage Big Bull Creek Park and oversee Milldale Farm. I've been with Johnson County for 33 years. I started off as a seasonal and have just gradually worked my way up through the different layers. And now I find myself responsible for the current largest park in Johnson County Parks and Rec. We sit just a little over 2,000 acres. We're primarily native, wild, and we have a few shelter houses and a playground for kids to come and play at. So right now we're looking at the nature play area, which consists of 2 water features. They're similar, but they're broken down in age, 2 to 5-year-old and 5 to 12-year-old. And then we have a shelter that was actually designed for child's play. So our shelter policy for Johnson County is it's first come, first serve. Any day of the week, if the shelter's empty, you're welcome to use it. If you have a party that you're planning for and want to make sure that the shelter is dedicated to you, there is a reservation hotline and a small minimum fee for the day. Well, the playground in particular was designed to keep the natural elements. We wanted the children to be able to play in a wild setting, and so most of the trees that are on the playground were originally here, part of the timber. One of the play features is a large dead tree that now is known to carry the home of a black snake, and kids and parents find it periodically, and the stories make their way back to me at the office, and so that's kind of fun. They've had baby deer out here where the mother had gotten hit by a car, and I came out here one day and actually had children petting the baby deer. And that's not a good thing, but it was actually unique to see, and it was a good photo op at that point. And but almost any given day, you can, if you're quiet enough and you're curious enough, you can run into just about anything. All right, so as you can imagine, this creek that runs through the playground, it's a unique place. It's challenging because it also dries up, and then it also floods. But I've seen more moms and kids down here muddy from head to toe in October, when you wouldn't think anybody'd be out here playing because of the cold weather. But it's a fun creek. They all play in it, skip rocks, catch frogs. So it's a unique piece to Big Bull Creek Park.
Is it important for people to connect with nature in this way?
Well, the only way to connect is to get dirty. So you got to get your hands in it. You have to surround yourself by it, and be okay with going home with some bug bites.
I like that. That's a good philosophy to live by.
Yeah, I think one of the park design philosophies here when the park was envisioned was getting kids, like just giving them a taste of nature, getting to see the creek a little bit, getting to see some native plantings, see some prairie, and then you can go off into the really wild park, like set the stage for how big and wild this place is. Like, this is a park where people really get lost. This is a park where there are, thousands of acres of land to kind of immerse yourself in, and I think the original idea was to just get you excited about nature and not scared. And then once you kind of play in the creek and you visit the playground, then you can go off and experience the rest of the park.
Currently, Big Bull Creek Park is getting ready for a public art display. The county has gone out to and put out a request for artists to submit their ideas for a large sculpture project or art project of some sort. And we have multiple locations here at the park site that will eventually be determined on where this piece of art goes. It'll be different layers in the sense of different steps to get to the final product. But currently, Big Bull Creek Park is finally getting some art.
Public art at JCPRD parks, trails, and facilities inspire a deeper connection to place through interactive, immersive, and inclusive experiences. Like this mural by ITRA Icons, the collaborative duo Isaac Tapia and Rodrigo Alvarez. You can see it at the Oakland Field House at the Mid-America West Sports Complex.
Originally, this field was planted before the park was ever even designed. It was just property out here. And this was one of the fields that just happened to have, we had some old seed. It just got put down on the ground here to see whatever would come up. And then just recently, the last 2 years, it's been burnt 2 years in a row. And then we actually put down some fresh seed in it last year. A combination of ag farming and cattle. We've had some pig ranchers on here before too, but multiple homesteads. The park's full of hand dug wells. There was a period of time when it was also they were pumping natural gas and crude oil off different pieces of the property. All the oil products has been capped and cleaned up. We're still currently in the process of shutting down properly the water wells.
All right, so we're at the first large-scale prairie here at Big Bull Creek that you get to from the Sunflower Park side. And as you look out across this landscape, you're looking at one of the largest prairie restorations in the entire Kansas City area. And so the original design here was to try to make at least a 500-acre prairie that would sustain grassland birds. And the original vision was to create a core prairie large enough that grassland birds could reside here forever. And I think we've done that. I think we're well over 500 acres of prairie on the ground. Dan's team has been relentless in getting this habitat down. And it creates a scale of prairie that you just don't see in Kansas City anymore. And so you can come out here and truly see large open prairies with no trees, with Henslow's sparrows and dickcissels and bobolinks migrating through in a way you don't see anywhere else in Kansas City.
Our management practices throughout the Big Bull Creek Park is a combination of things. We use equipment with large, heavy-duty mowers to knock down the grasses and the flowers, and allows them to rejuvenate. We also do haying, and that helps our local farmers, as well as we do prescribed burns. And we're currently trying to get things into a cycle of means, but it has been challenging just in the sense of all three of those combinations require Mother Nature to be at her best and allow us to accomplish these things. But we are typically burning about 250 acres about on average a year right now. We're 8 years into it, so it's a lot for my team to try and get done. And most years we're relatively successful, and but there's always at the end of the season the goals for the next stage. So it's ongoing all the time, and throughout the year different phases of it occur.
All right, so in my hand I've got Sericea lespedeza, and it is going to be what our natural resource and parks teams spend most of their summer on here at Big Bull Creek. It's going to be an invasive species that is going to spread pretty rapidly if it doesn't get under control. If you manage a field for 3 years really hard, it's just a maintenance item, and our goal is to get all these prairies and all the units around the county where there's one visit a year for Sericea instead of repeated visits. And so the goal is to find the locations, spot where the infestations are, and manage them with herbicide. We've had some success with doing growing season fire on Sericea and burning it right when it's going into bloom. And that buys you time, and then a little herbicide application after that. And so we're turning the tide in the county, and fields that were 100% lespedeza have now are healthy prairies. And so there'll be staff in UTVs and backpack sprayers hunting for this plant all over this 2,000-acre park site this summer.
This was an old 2-story farmhouse, and so as we look across this prairie, you're seeing things that that family would have grown when they were living here. So the irises and the peony bushes, it's kind of neat just to see it pop out of nowhere. Yeah, so this particular location, they had it was a cattle ranch, and then at some point somebody moved it into some pig farming. But where we're standing was the house, and then to the north of us was I don't know what you'd call them, runners, where they'd run cattle up into the barn, and they had multiple ways of feeding them. And we had all that cleaned up about 2 years ago when we were trying to make the silos themselves a safer place to be, and for people to come and just kind of tour the spot. So this is just what's left of it. So originally they all had doors on them. And we had actually wired them all shut. As you see, we can't even get up on the ladders anymore. But then somebody came and cut them. So then it was like, okay, they obviously want to be able to see inside or crawl inside. And then we were worried about people getting locked in because the door's locked from the outside. So we were like, let's just get rid of all the doors. And if anybody wants to climb in, at least they're not permanently stuck in there. So
No barn owls, unfortunately.
Wow.
All right, so here at this park site, we have a mosaic of different kinds of prairie. We want to make sure we don't burn the whole thing at once. We make sure that we don't hay the whole thing at once. We make sure that we just have a mosaic of different kinds of thatch and native grasses for grassland birds. So behind me is a unit that looks like it's got 2 years worth of thatch in it. And behind us is a hayed unit. And then on the other side of us is a freshly burned unit. And so we're providing every different kind of cover that grassland birds need. And we know in the first 5 years, Henslow sparrows are back, and the dickcissels are here, and the scissortail flycatchers are here. And so we do have the impacts of I-35, and we have a quarry adjacent to us with some sound impacts. But in the core of the 500-acre prairie, we are seeing the conservative grassland birds have returned.
With over 2,000 acres, you can visit Big Bull Creek Park 1,000 times and see something new. I first visited the woodland trails earlier this spring. Dramatic rock outcroppings, bird watching, nature play, and cool creek waters to splash around in make this a great destination for all ages. During our spring visit, we walked along the rocky upland woods while Big Bull Creek snaked beneath us. Pawpaw groves show off their goth bell-shaped flowers. A light, smelly odor attracts flies, our earliest pollinators. Thanks to these winged underdogs, the woods will be full of ripe green fruits come fall, providing a boost of energy for wildlife and foragers alike before a harsh winter sets in. An explosion of spring ephemeral flowers and cushions of moss enveloped the rocky hillsides. I can only imagine ants performing their instinctual yet mutualistic duties of myrmecochory, circling and dancing across the forest floor, spreading wildflower seeds in their wake. Do they realize the beauty they bring into our world despite being so small? Shallow waters for now, but come a big summer rain, this creek fills up fast. Until then, native crawdads and darterfish rest in the cool water, hiding beneath rocks whenever a shadow crosses over them. Buckeye trees bloom for a short while, often underappreciated except by those who know the magic of a woodland in spring. Walking in nature is all we need to reset our weary minds sometimes. Okay, maybe hugging a big tree with a loved one helps too. But nature is often misunderstood as something to fear or not understand. My hope is your curiosity ignites and leads you to love this land of ours. Natural areas need our support, both through acts of stewardship and simply enjoying their presence. When was the last time you were in awe? Maybe it's time for you to get back out on the trail.
This is the most massive Bur Oak I've ever seen. Limbs touching the ground. Little pawpaws growing under here. Did I see mayaples over there too?
So this is one of my favorite oak trees in Johnson County, Kansas. So this is a Bur Oak at Big Bull Creek Park that is at least 250 years old. We haven't cored it, but it has the largest crown I've seen of an oak in the county. And it actually grows to the ground and then grows back up. It's never been trimmed. It has an entire ecosystem underneath it. So there's an entire pawpaw forest underneath this Bur Oak. It is one of the most outstanding trees that I've ever seen in this region. An oak is a keystone species which really holds the entire environment together. And so it's going to have caterpillars that our wood warblers are feeding on right now. You've got pawpaws growing underneath it. You've got all kinds of different animals and plants that interact with this tree. And it's really a kind of like it's a keystone part of the Big Bull Creek environment. And so this Bur Oak is sitting in some wet soil between the creek and the upland prairies. And so it's right where you would find a Bur Oak tree. And it is a tree that we've taken the acorns from, and we're trying to grow its genetics so we can plant them other places in the county. And so it is just a phenomenal species that has so much value beyond the tree itself.
So here you can really see, this is a branch that is coming down, touching the ground, and coming back up. pretty nuts. You can see the understory in here. There's so much pawpaw in there. And I would go through if I had more permethrin on my clothes, but it's just amazing. I love how sculptural bur oaks are. There's just their trunk structures is pretty remarkable. And then their cute leaves even.
All right, so one exciting plant to find in eastern Kansas is columbine. So it loves rocky woods, and we are in a rocky woodland. This is a rocky moist woodland. Eastern third of Kansas only is where you're going to find this species. Once things dry out, they're gone. And so hummingbirds are going to nectar here. You're going to get bumblebees on the columbine. It's not something we see a lot of in eastern Kansas. It's really on these limestone bluffs where you're going to find this amazing species. We collect the seed with KC Wildlands and disperse it in additional sites and try to spread the diversity of the seed around to new locations. But it's absolutely awesome to see right on the edge of a pasture, right as this rocky woodland drops off down to Bull Creek. Big Bull Creek has one of the most intact riparian forests in the Kansas City area. There is very little bush honeysuckle on the site. There's very little garlic mustard. There's very little impact from development other than stormwater coming from northern Johnson County. And it is just an intact, stunning gallery forest with pawpaw in the understory, all the ephemeral wildflowers. It's a perfect idea of what pre-settlement riparian forests look like in Kansas City. So if you can get to Big Bull Creek and walk from the park at Sunflower to I-35 and back, it will give you an idea of what some of these riparian moist forests look like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So another cool part of Big Bull Creek Park is the fact that it's connected to the state and federal land at Hillsdale Lake. And so when we built this park, the idea was when we took the land out of agriculture, it'd be cleaning water for people to drink water to Hillsdale. We also realized when we added 2,000 acres of public land to the tens of thousands of public land at Hillsdale, it created an even larger public space. And so the entire Hillsdale Lake watershed and Big Bull Creek is a giant piece of public land in southern Johnson County and northern Miami County that very few people realize is there. It's just a huge amount of biodiversity across this two-county area, kind of split by I-35, that is going to be protected forever.
All right. That was wonderful. And we're going to go ahead and jump into our Q&A with Matt Garrett, the Natural Resource Manager at Johnson County Parks and Recreation District. First, I just want to say how cool it was to visit Big Bull Creek a month apart and just see how drastically different the landscape looks. So kind of along that lines, you know, we have our guided naturalist walk there this Saturday. What type of plants do you expect we will see when we visit this weekend, Matt?
Yeah, it's the tail end of the ephemeral wildflowers. So I think we'll still see some mayaples that are finishing up. I think the columbine is still going strong and it's on the tail end. The woodland phlox is going to still be popping. The pachyra is still going to be blooming. And so I think the riparian forest is really starting to close in and the ephemerals are ending and summer is starting to really take off. So I think it'll be getting kind of the tail end of that early season wildflower bloom.
Awesome. I also suspect we'll probably see maybe some blue false indigo out in the prairie areas, possibly. Maybe even some foxglove beard tongue, if I recall.
Yep.
I saw them about to emerge last time we were there, so I look forward to grading them.
Yeah, and there's just so many different prairies that were all planted at different times, and so they're all in different levels of infancy, and so some are huge expressions of beard tongue, and some of them are more grass heavy, and so yeah, all the units are different.
So speaking of the grasslands, you mentioned it's a really great haven for our native birds, especially those who are migrating through. What someone's asking, what birds are you all hoping to attract by creating this habitat for them?
Yeah, the majority, like the sparrows we were mentioning, like Henslow sparrow is an important one. It's one of the best spots to see dickcissels. They're singing on every power line and every tree line. The meadowlarks are one of the most threatened grassland birds in North America right now. I think they've had a 70% decline, and the idea of not seeing meadowlarks anymore is not something I can really stomach. So, the original idea was with Audubon. Some folks from Audubon Society of Burros and I talked about like what would it take if we built this park, and what's the scale of grassland that would keep meadowlarks in Johnson County? And so that's kind of trying to get a minimum of 500 acres. And by the time we're done planting, we'll probably have well over 1,000 acres of prairie on the site.
Holy smokes. And when you say habitat, is it I know grasslands, but is all types of grassland created equally? Like, do birds need just simply one type of grassland for
Yep.
habitat?
So birds are about structure. They really care about structure. And so some birds need 4 to 5 years of grass thatch, and some need fresh, open, freshly burned, freshly grazed grasslands. And so as long as it's we're providing just a very varied landscape, that's really what birds need. And so making sure we have all different kinds of structure for them is really the best thing we can do. And lots of edge habitat, good edge habitat. We're trying to get better about not being so firm between our woodlands and our prairies and trying to allow them to blend together. But with fire lines and things like that, sometimes we end with these really drastic edges. And so the staff at Big Bull Creek have been working on better quail habitat and trees down on the edges and shrubs and trying to allow a better kind of ecotone transition between our prairies and our woodlands, and that's something we're trying to get better about.
Nice. And speaking of quails, are y'all seeing any bob whites out there?
Yeah, so it has a good population of quail on the site, and the scissortail flycatchers are down there. And so a lot of the birds you expect and hopefully see in that area that we've lost on the northern part of the county, it's nice to still see them holding on in the south end of the county and the west side of the county. That 15 years ago, you would be seeing meadowlarks and scissortail flycatchers at Shawnee Mission Park, and just the rapid rate of development in the near the 435 loop, we've really seen the grassland birds drop off in our more urban environment.
I see. And it looks like we have a lot of bird lovers in our audience today. A few more bird questions to bring your way. What what is the best time of day or best time of year, or maybe both, to see some of these migrating birds?
So right now is an awesome time to be at Big Bull Creek. The warbler migration is peak last week, this week. A lot of the really awesome warblers are moving through. And then as we transition into early summer, that's when you're really going to get the grassland birds. And so I think the month of May is awesome for migration. And then early June, late May to early June is really neat to see the grassland birds out there. And Big Bull Creek is a hot, big park. And so it's really open with the amount of prairie you have out there. So I'd always recommend visiting in the early morning while it's still cool out, because you can really get yourself caught out there on a hot day, 500 acres away from your car.
Yeah, that's fair. And for this Saturday, we are going to get started early. We'll hit the trail, well, early-ish. We'll start at 9, but we have awesome weather this weekend, which is great. So I saw that the temperature is actually dropping a little bit, so it should be in the upper 70s, which is, in my opinion, perfect for a nice day out on the.
Yeah, and the technician that's joining you, Drew Dabalier, he's planted most of the prairie there.
Oh,
So
awesome.
that gentleman has sat on a tractor for years, putting the prairie in the ground, and he has a deep love for the woods out there. So anybody joining or signing up still for the hike, the technician that's going to be joining you intimately knows this park. He knows every corner of it.
Drew is so much fun too. He joined us at Cedar Niles
Yeah.
for our walk last year. If folks remember that episode or joined us for that walk, just full of knowledge. He's an avid mushroom hunter and just knows a ton of things about our local nature and natural ecosystem. So
Yeah, you mentioned Hillsdale in the video, and the connection to that public land there. almost like 60,000 people get their drinking water from that lake. And so us converting all of the agriculture at Big Bull Creek and putting it into native is really cleaning water and capping all the oil wells and capping gas wells. And the amount of work we've done to help nature is actually also helping people that are around Big Bull Creek. And so it's been neat to do something for conservation, but it also has a direct impact on drinking water for people.
Yeah, folks often think we are disconnected or separate from nature, and truly, when we have healthy, natural, or different healthy natural areas, we have healthier communities that we thrive in. So I appreciate that note there. Okay, so just a couple more questions about birds, and then I'm going to shift gears. But folks are wondering if you see owls out there, and if you're doing bird surveys to quantify the results of your habitat restoration efforts.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few different kinds of owls out there. I haven't checked eBirds lately, but we did initially do some breeding bird surveys at Big Bull Creek, and we did a few years and got some baseline data. And we're really thinking about working with our local master naturalists that have a lot of participants and maybe creating a route and having our own breeding bird survey that we can do every year forever at Big Bull Creek. We have so many projects down there and so few people. That's one of those side quest dreams. And there's a million cool things we want to do. Like we recently planted a new prairie with KU and put mycorrhizal inoculant in a field. And so there's going to be 14 fungus bacterial relationships that we put in the ground with the seed, and we're going to see how this prairie grows compared to some other ones. But there's so many things to get done down there. It's a big
Totally.
space.
That makes sense. And that leads to Alexander's question. How many people are working on all of that land? And do you recruit groups of volunteers for managing invasive species or other work?
Yeah, so our goal or our dream is to have one natural resource technician per park region. And right now, the technician that takes care of Big Bull Creek also has to split his time between our southeast region. And so Bull Creek is getting half of a full-time natural resource technician, and then 2 full-time Bull Creek staff are usually helping us in the summertime. So I off and on 3 full-time staff working on the natural areas, and then we have a couple part-time technicians helping us down there as well, because it's such a big space. The woodlands are in really good shape, so we don't have to spend as much time dealing with invasives. There's some garlic mustard, but it's not terrible. But keeping the sericea and the Johnson grass out early on is taking a lot of work. But luckily, we put it all into the cloud. We have a geo database where if somebody goes out and sprays a field, somebody can show up the next day with an iPad and they can see right where the other person left off. And so it allows us to be really exact and not miss areas. Having everything in the cloud allows me to go back at the end of the year, see how much time, energy, hours people were spent burning, spraying, seeding. Even the seeding data goes into the database. And so we can create story maps and we can actually tell each year how much we spend on different natural resource tasks.
Wow. Working smarter and it's still hard work.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears and focus on invasive species. Can you explain how invasive species just generally, like what are invasive species? How did they get here? Why are they an issue?
Yeah, a lot of it generally comes from people thinking that bringing something from somewhere else will make things better. And so a lot of the invasives we deal with were actually brought in by conservation departments and DOTs to help stabilize soil or provide wildlife benefit. And because obviously our native plants probably can't do it themselves, right? And so a lot of like sericea was brought in to do something that they thought it would, benefit nature, and it clearly hasn't. And so these are non-native organisms that cause harm to our local ecosystems, and they could come in on a freight container from somewhere else. But generally, a lot of these were introduced, and Sericea lespedeza has just thousands and thousands of seeds. And if we let a small colony or a small kind of hotspot get loose, it can take years to get it under control. And spring fire generally makes it even happier. And you can mow it. That just saves you a little bit of time. You can burn it in the fall or late summer, and that'll reduce it. But unfortunately, sericea generally requires a targeted herbicide application.
And what do you use? What do you spray Sericea with?
Yeah, we're going to use something with a triclopyr chemical in it, so it's a remedial to our pasture guard, and it can harm forbs, wildflowers, but their grasses are generally tolerant of it, and so we're trying to use the most pinpointed herbicide we can. For Johnson grass, we have a chemical called Outrider that is specific to Johnson grass, and so we're trying to not use blunt tools. We're trying to change up management techniques and hay and burn and cut and spray in very targeted ways, and not just use big kind of blunt management tools. So it's trying to make it as resilient and balanced as possible.
And you mentioned that you don't have as much of a bush honeysuckle issue. Why is that? And what are the easiest and best ways to remove this species?
Yeah, so the shrub honeysuckles were another introduced species. So up in the suburban and urban areas of Kansas City, they were planted in yards, and it is just cascaded from the inside the 435 loop out to the exurbs. And luckily, Bull Creek is literally the edge of Johnson County, so it is on the Miami County line, and so it's as far from suburban development in 1950s, 60s, 70s homes where these plants were originally planted that it's just taken it that long to get down there. And we do find it there in Lexington, Lake Park, and Kill Creek. But when there's just a few plants in the fall and the natives have all defoliated, um, you can find the still photosynthesizing green shrub honeysuckles. And we can generally target them when there's just a few of them. We'll generally cut and treat those with an herbicide. But it's much easier to take care of them when there's just hot spots than when we lose a whole park to shrub honeysuckle, and then we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring it back from the edge.
Val mentions that old homesteads often have Vinca minor, periwinkle. Did you notice any of this at Big Bull Creek? And were they exterminated? Did they die out? Are they still in sight? Or what are some, besides the irises and the peonies we saw in the clip earlier, were there any invasive species brought by the old homesteads?
Yeah, the extent of what we've seen is pretty much what we saw. We saw some wild Sweet William, that purple that we saw in the background. That I guess is that what it's called, Sweet William, or
No, it's
what's it go by?
Rocket Dame or purple.
Rocket Dame. Okay.
Yeah,
So we
it
saw a
looks
bunch of that
similar.
Rocket Dame and the peonies and the irises. Really, the bigger issue from the old homesteads is the junk. That, farmers used to just dump the debris and the trash in the gullies. And so Dan's team spent so much time. We found a gully full of 50-gallon barrels with unknown chemicals that we had to have tested and then removed off site, and open gas wells and things like that. And we had an entire like valley that was full of old trucks and cars and just dumpster after dumpster of 100 years of farm debris. Just took it a really long time to get that under control, and then finding abandoned wells like oil wells that people forgot in shrub forests, and trying to get with the state of Kansas to get funding to close oil wells. That took a lot of time.
Wow, I can only imagine. Susan Sanders has a really great question about at the beginning of our episode, we showed the creek over at the nature play area. Can you reassure us that the water in the creek is safe for people to play in? She sure hopes so.
Yeah, so the watershed for that pretty little ephemeral creek is prairie. And its watershed is coming from the park site. So it's a wonderful place for kids to play. And I love that playground a lot too, because my spouse is actually the designer of the park site, and so she worked for the agency for almost 18 years, and she got to develop the park and be the park project planner while I was doing the prairies with Dan. And so it was neat to go to work, and my wife's building the playgrounds and the parking lots, and we're out on the seed drill and getting the habitat on the ground. So it's been really neat that my family got to work on a park, and we got to kind of put our thumbprint on a park that's going to be around forever. So that was really special for us.
That gave me goosebumps. Also, shout out to Megan Garrett. We love you. And that park is amazing. I realized it's such a big park. So when you first brought me, or when you brought me there just a couple weeks ago for our second visit, I realized, oh my gosh, I've actually been here. This is the third time I've been here, and I had just forgotten. But one of my favorite memories is visiting that nature play area. I played in the creek, and this was only like
Right?
a couple years ago, y'all. So kid at heart still. And there were so many crawdads, there were frogs. I even got to meet that big black rat snake that was in that hollow of the tree. So
Yeah.
it's fun for all ages, and I'm really excited to return this weekend. And I mentioned earlier that in addition to our hiking around, we're gonna then loop back to that nature play area and enjoy a picnic. And so it's just really, again, a fun area to visit. No matter your experience level of getting out on the trail, like you mentioned, you can just come get a little taste of nature at that little park or venture off for a bigger adventure throughout the park trail system.
Yeah, you got to see your first copperhead at Big Bull Creek at
I
a very remote
did.
spot. It was very far from all the parking lots, but
It
the most
was,
most
yeah.
remote spot, you got to see an awesome copperhead.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second because I know snakes can be polarizing. I'm a big fan, and I was so excited because I've never seen a copperhead out in the wild, and it was such a delight to visit that snake. It was very charming and beautiful. It didn't want anything to do with me, and I gave it lots of space. But with that extended camera, I was able to kind of get a little glimpse there, and it's magic. So there is all kinds of wildlife there, but don't worry if you ever come across a copperhead. They're not there to get you. They just really want to mind their own business and carry on their way. But I still tell all my friends and my mom about it, much to her dismay.
Yeah, it's a neat park site. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Okay, so just a few more questions before we log off for the day. Anonymous is asking if there are any patches of undisturbed native prairie in the park.
That is a funny story. There actually is one tiny little knob. Like you would think in 2,000 acres, there would still be some remnant habitat on that site, upland grassland habitat. And on the side of I-35, just south of I-35, there's one little knob of rattlesnake master and some liatris and coneflowers, but it's tiny, like less than a quarter acre. And so the amount of time and effort and the amount of money to put native habitat on the ground, you're pushing anywhere from $500 to $1,000 an acre just for the seed. And then you talk about the chemical or the farming practices to get the land prepped and weed free, time on the seed drill, and then the burning. And our goal is it's expensive to plant a prairie, but it's not expensive to maintain prairie long term. So when you put it in that fire hang cycle, limited visits to check on invasives, it's expensive on the front end, but we just really want to visit it occasionally and make sure it's still healthy and keep our costs down.
Very cool. Okay, and anonymous, and maybe perhaps the same person, perhaps not. Someone is asking for the hike this weekend and just in general, what are the rules about bringing dogs to the park? Do they need to be on leash? Can they run off leash? Um, if you want to answer that first part, and then I can answer the second part about
Sure.
the program this weekend.
Yeah, dogs are welcome in all JCPRD parks except for Ernie Miller Nature Center. So, dogs are awesome at Big Bull Creek on a leash, and so we have the nicest off leash areas in the entire Kansas City area, in 3 of our parks. And if they're coming to Big Bull Creek, they just need to be on a leash. That's the only rule there. And then if you're visiting Ernie Miller, that's our only site where they cannot be.
That makes sense. And why is it important to keep your dog on a leash at these natural areas? Can you talk about that a little bit too?
Yeah. So it's funny. A place like Shawnee Mission Park has had one of the highest deer populations in North America, except for the off-leash area. So um, the 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 canines will really push wildlife away, and so it'll really disrupt their natural habitat. And and we've had people with off-leash dogs had their off-leash dogs attacked by coyotes in the open spaces in our more urban parks like Stoll Park. So it's a natural space for wildlife, and if your dog's not under voice control, it has an opportunity to get into the kind of the encroachment zone for a fox or a coyote. It could sniff into a log where there's a venomous snake, and it's just not the appropriate place for a dog to be off leash. When we do have some really neat enclosed natural off leash areas like Shawnee Mission Park, which have forests and have water access, and there's some really neat spaces that we provide to give that same opportunity.
Very nice, yeah. And we're all dog lovers. I know you have a lovely dog yourself, Matt. But I will say for this weekend's event, I will encourage you to keep your dogs at home. You could reach out to me via email. We can have a conversation about it. But just because I know some people are afraid of dogs, and I know we will likely come across some cool wildlife. Like, I don't know if you all noticed at the beginning of this episode, there was a tiny little ringneck snake, which could easily get swallowed up by a dog walking across the trail. So I think it's best to leave our furry friends at home, but I welcome a conversation if you'd like to reach out to me if you're thinking about joining us this weekend. Okay, well, Matt, thank you so much for being our guest expert today and sharing Big Bull Creek Park with us. What a delightful place. And for our viewers at home, I hope you will consider joining us both this weekend and our next episode, which will highlight Ernie Miller Nature Center. Matt and I were able to go visit after we had visited Big Bull Creek a couple weeks ago, and we have some really cool animal friends that will be introducing
A
you.
bunch of really cool animal friends. It's a
Yeah,
different kind of episode.
it is. And so, as you all know, with native plants, one of the big reasons we plant and support native plants and landscapes is for that faunal connection. So I hope you all will join us at our next episode on June 5th at noon to see what Ernie Miller Nature Center is like. And then I will send you all a link following today's show where you can sign up for both the hike this weekend or the hike at Ernie Miller Nature Center on June 21st. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.